Hello everyone. In this assignment, you need to implement a web form. Web forms are ways that you can get information from your users. Let's see how we can create a web form. I open Visual Studio Code. From the File menu, I open a folder. Assume I want to store the HTML files and CSS files here in the folder assignment 4. I create a new folder and then select the folder and open it. So to create our first HTML page, I click on the new file button in the Explorer pane and name the file 1.html. Okay, I type an exclamation mark, Visual Studio Code pop-ups and a snippet. We choose it and it creates a template for us. We are going to use a style sheet file, so I type link and I type the style sheet file here. Let's change the title of the page to assignment 4 digital web form. Okay. To create a form, you need a form tag. Form tags have some mandatory attributes. The most important one is action. The action attribute specifies the file that is supposed to receive the data of this form. So in this example, it says that the data entered by user must be transferred to the file test.html using the GET protocol. I should type test.html. The second important property is method. Method specifies the protocol that we want to use for transferring information and data from user computer to the server. According to the instruction, the protocol should be GET. Okay. Now it's time to create the form. First, name, star, and then we need to create a text box. Many digital form controls are created by using input tag. Input tag has an attribute called type, which allows us to define the type of the button. Let's preview the page. So far, we have created something like this. If you want to transfer the data of a control to a server, the control should have a name. So we must specify a name for our control. Let's say first name. Okay. Also, we want to say that this text is a label for this control. So we transfer this text inside a label tag. Now we need to establish a connection between the control and this label. To establish a connection between a control and a label, we need to add an ID for the control. Let's say first name. And now I need to paste this, copy and paste this name in the for attribute of the label tag. As you see, there is no visual effect for any label tags, but we use label tags because we want to help people who need assistant. Assistant tools can use this information to read the page in a much more sensible way for disabled people. Okay, now we established a connection between this label and this text. Also, we want to style this asterisk character. So I put it in a span tag and assign a class for it. Why? Because the text inside this span tag should follow some specific rules. So I add a class because I'm going to have several instances of such a span tags. I need to define a class for it. For the name of the class, I'm going to type mandatory. You know that you are allowed to choose whatever the name you want. Okay, that's it. We created the first control, its label, and also a span tag which shows this field is mandatory. The next control is again a text box. So I copy and paste these two lines and change just some text, last name, and change the ID of this control to last name, and also the name of the control to last name. That's it. Oh, and this attribute to last name. Now we have a label for the control whose ID is last name. Also, we have a span tag with a special class mandatory, and we have another text control. The third control is a control that is supposed to be used for entering emails. So again, I'll copy and paste these two lines. I change the ID of this control to email. You know that we have a special type for email, which does some primary checks to see if user enters something like a valid email or not. So I change the name to email. This is a little bit confusing. The type email is mandatory, but you know that for the name and for the ID, you can choose whatever you want. And also I change this to email, and this one to email. Okay. Let's create the fourth control, contact number. Again, it should be something like this. Contact number, and I change the ID to contact, and the name to contact. Contact number is actually a phone number. We have a special type for getting phone numbers from users. Then we need 3 checkboxes. Preferred working environment. They are not mandatory, so we don't need this part. The label we wrote, we type preferred working environment. And here we need to create 3 checkboxes. And let's say env. I change the ID to env. To create a checkbox, we need to change the type to checkbox, and the name should be env. I copy and paste this 3 times. Checkboxes should have a value. When we select the checkbox, this value will be sent to the server. Otherwise, nothing will be sent to the server as the value of the control. Okay, let's see. We have 3 options: remote, and I put R for its value. Then we have in office, I put in for its value. And for the last one, hybrid, I put H for its value. For checkboxes, you should add the text for each checkbox before or after the checkbox in a span tag, or you can just type it like this. In person and hybrid. Okay. And then, are you authorized to work in the United States? We need to implement 2 radio buttons. Again, label for something. Are you authorized to work in the United States? To create radio buttons, we should say type radio and we should specify a name. I choose auth for the name, and for value we have yes or no. I put Y, and after that I type yes. Again, I type another input control with the type radio. Its name should be the same as the previous one. Otherwise, they will not be in the same group. No. Okay. And let's add an ID out. Okay. Now you can choose only one of these, but if they have different name, each of these belongs to different groups. So users can choose both of them. So make sure to assign the same name for all the radio buttons which belong to the same group. And at the end, we need a combo box. Select highest level of education. Again, we need a label. Let me copy this. Label edu. Select the highest. Okay, to create the items of a combo box, we use option tags. Here I just added 2 option tags. For the rest of the items, for each of them you need to add 1 option tag. We should also add an ID and a name for the combo box. Also, for the required fields, I need to add required attributes without any value. And at the end, we need a submit button, which allows us to send the data to a server. The caption of the button is specified in the value attribute. Now it's time to style the form. To style a form, we have several options. One of the options is using a table tag, which I personally like it. So I add a table tag inside the form tag and put every other stuff inside it. Then for each label and control, or in another word, for each set of controls and their caption, we create a row and put those in the row. Let's do it a little bit fast. Okay, now for each row we create 2 cells. Usually, sometimes we just need to create 1 cell. We put the label of controls in 1 cell and the control itself in another cell. So something like this. In the last column, in the last row, we only need to have 1 cell because the button doesn't have any label. So we need to add a colospan attribute with value 2 to say that this cell actually occupies 2 columns. As you see, for some items, we need to implement several controls. And for such items, we usually split the row into two rows, and we put the caption in the first row and the controls in another row. So let's follow this policy. For preferred working environment, we create a new row and we put the label in the first cell of the row and set the color span of the cell to 2 to say that the cell actually occupies two columns. And we do the same thing for other items that needs to be splitted. Also, since these radio buttons are required items, I am going to add required attribute to them. That's it. It seems that our form looks good. Now let's style the page. Okay, in the CSS, we start with the table tag. Let's say background color, width. Let's add some gap between the border of the table and its content. So I added padding declaration, 5 pixel. Yes, we have some gaps and the gaps is enough. Let's add a border for our table, 1 pixel solid, and the color gray. Also, you may want to round the corner of the table, so we add border radius declaration. You may want to add box shadow, 5 pixel, 5 pixel, 3 pixel, gray. And you may want to center the form, margin auto. Since table is a block element, to center it horizontally, we just need to declare margin auto. It looks good. Let's continue with the mandatory class, which are used for the span tags. Color red, that's enough for us. And we need to center this button. This button is inside the last row, so we can say select the TR, which is the last child of its parent. Set the text align attribute to center. Now we centered the button in the last row. That's it. Have a nice time.